we'll get started with this presentation. Let's see if it, can people see it okay? Yeah.
Perfect.
Yes. Okay. So whoops, it seems like it doesn't want to, here we go. I've got all the pictures I have over here on my left and I'm trying to get out of the way. So, basically the intention here is to look at the clean energy hubs and the New York State peer-to-peer climate and energy network and discuss how we could actually work together. The objectives for today, essentially, the CLCPA goals are enormous. They're really ambitious, as you all well know. The P2P network and the organizations in it have a big role to play in helping the state achieve those goals. And we think the proposal on the table here is that the clean energy hubs can benefit you to help do that. So that's the first is how can the P2P network organizations benefit from the clean energy hubs? And then the second objective is how can the hubs themselves benefit from your organizations? And then third, once we've established that, the hope is that we would then have some discussion about possible steps towards greater connection. And I'll note that this is based on the experience and discussions that Melissa and I and the hubs have had, the Long Island hub, as well as discussions that I've had with other clean energy hub leaders. I'm also not speaking on behalf of NYSERDA, and this is not an official position. I'm not taking an official position here of the Long Island hub as well, neither. Before I do that, I just wanted to really sort of underscore the value of a strong P2P network and the need for a strong P2P network in achieving CLCPA goals. And that would be for every clean energy actor throughout New York. And I want to do that through a little story about a local leader education program that was carried out 16 years ago, and which is still having impact today. I'm not going to go into the program itself in much detail. I just want to give you the context and then a little bit about what we did, and then some of the results. But basically, the context was, 2008, there was the crash, as you all know, the Great Recession. Clean energy represented a huge opportunity, a great opportunity to create new jobs. And along with that, the American Recovery and Reconstruction Act funds, the ARA funds, and New York State incentives provided funding to actually cover between 75 and 100% of the cost of low moderate income households energy efficiency retrofits. It also included funds for workforce development to help people who would want to enter this, who had not done this work before, enter it. But that was all coupled with relatively little understanding by local leadership of the economic development potential for clean energy. So the program had some key elements, and the only reason I'm not going to go into this in any detail at all. If you want to, you can. I'm happy to talk about this if you see that this might have some actual potential application for any of you today. But essentially, we worked with leaders from many key sectors that would have an impact on the clean energy economy. That included local government, economic development, and businesses, as well as nonprofits, churches, schools, et cetera. And our basic approach was to make clean energy personal for leaders, for local leaders, by doing blower door tests in their homes. And they could then dramatically see how leaky their homes were, how poor performing their homes were, and begin to understand why their homes, as well as homes of their constituents, were so uncomfortable in the wintertime in particular. And once we drove that point home, we then shared data with them on the impact that clean energy work would have for their constituents in terms of jobs and money savings, as well as the enormous potential for bringing resources and dollars into the local economy and the regional economy. We then shared very simple, very specific steps that they could take in their capacity as local leaders. We linked them with peers, the peer-to-peer network, essentially, but we linked them with peers in the region with each other. So pastors with pastors, town supervisors with town supervisors, highway people with highway people. So those people who were interested in working on this began to be linked together. And then a key to this, we think, was deploying young people in this process because they helped open doors. Leaders were not going to open doors for us to do blower door tests in their homes. But they didn't really have a choice because they were so concerned about brain drain and wanting to keep young people in their communities to say no to a college student that wanted to actually do a blower door test would have been fairly hard for them to do. The results, a large set of local leaders from many sectors began working together in clean energy. And this was also at roughly the same time that Governor Cuomo began the regional economic development councils. And all the councils were required to develop an economic development strategy. And in the Southern Tier, fracking was the big potential. That was the thing that everybody thought was going to save the Southern Tier's economy. And lo and behold, out of that, in that development strategy, energy efficiency was featured as one of the key pillars for economic growth, and not fracking. And the leaders who were involved in the training that we did were actually some of the members who actually participated in that whole development of the strategy. Tompkins County Solarize campaigns, NICEH, non-pipe alternatives, all started were initiated by people who'd been participating in that program. And in fact, many of the most important clean energy and climate efforts in the Southern Tier over the past 15 years have ties to program participants. It was highly effective, there's no question. And we thought, boy, we should try to share this with other folks across the state. We thought it would be particularly helpful 15 years ago. We tried, but we had no established network or mechanism through which to share this. There might have been one, there might have been some network in existence, but we weren't aware of it. And that's where I think that underscores the value of the P2P network. If that network had been there, and if we had been a member of it, it would have made it much, much easier to actually engage with people, share some of the results, some of the early results. And I had no doubt that there would have been some interest in adapting, not necessarily adopting, but adapting what we did for other regions, and it would have been extremely helpful. So that's the value of the P2P network. I also wanted to just briefly explain what the hubs are in case there's anybody in the room who doesn't know what the hubs are. Excuse me. And also, by the way, if people have questions about anything as we move forward, you can either put them in the chat, Melissa, you can let me know, or we can just wait till the end, whatever works for you all. Anyway, you can see the hubs were formed. They're funded by NYSERDA. They're made up of teams of trusted community-based organizations in each region. They're supported by partners. So for example, RELI is a partner of ours in the region. The Long Island Hub has RELI, United Way of Long Island, a couple of universities, and the Sustainability Institute are all parts of the hub, along with cooperative extension associations, the two associations on Long Island. Those hubs provide support to residents, small business, and affordable housing owners, especially with a focus in underserved communities. And it is, in fact, a key part of NYSERDA views this as a key mechanism for achieving the goal of ensuring that 35% of the benefits and the investments around clean energy go to historically disadvantaged communities. Some examples, we do retail work, if you will, assisting with this, accessing job training for individuals who are interested, help residents finding local qualified clean energy contractors, sharing with them the incentives that are available, sharing information about EVs, et cetera, et cetera. These hubs, they're found in all regions. So your region, wherever you are, there is a clean energy hub. There are 3 in New York City and 9 across the rest of the state. And for people here in this call, there are 2 core tenets of each of the hubs that I think have direct relevance. The first is that the solutions to those barriers and the region's strengths are best identified by local stakeholders. So in the early stage of the work of the hubs, We are expected to carry out what's called the regional assessment and barriers analysis. It's kind of like a SWOT, but a little more, which we're calling the RABA. And that RABA, just the drafts of that were just submitted to NYSERDA. They're reviewing those. They'll get back to us. We'll incorporate their comments, and a final version will be released sometime this summer for each of the regions. And everybody, of course, is welcome to access those RABAs. They'll be published online. In addition, I can tell you, if anybody on Long Island wishes to see ours, the draft, you're welcome to see our draft. Currently, we would welcome any additional input to it as we go forward. In addition, those RABAs are going to continue. We'll be updating them every year. And then again, the strengths or the possible solutions to these barriers are going to be addressed through pilot projects and community campaigns. So if there is a solution, a possible solution identified by some entity locally, we have funds to help try that out to see if it would actually help address that barrier. And if it does, we'll share that information broadly, both in the region as well as across the state. The hubs also should identify and support and strengthen local initiatives, local organizations, and local stakeholders. The idea is not to make new programs. The idea is to identify things that are already working, organizations that are already working, people who are doing effective work in their region, and work with them to figure out ways to support them. Examples would include, those communities that have strong clean energy communities programs or climate smart communities programs. Any campaigns that are going on that have been effective if people wanted to expand those campaigns, workforce or contractor support programs, et cetera. So any of that are things that that we are basically supposed to work with to help identify and then work with them to figure out ways to support them. So with that in mind, then what could hubs offer you? And some specific things here would include helping connect with other organizations across the state. So if there's somebody already doing work elsewhere that's similar to yours, and you don't already know about them, wouldn't it be great if you could actually be in connection with them? And we can help you do that if we know that you're looking. Second, we can introduce our partners. The hubs have partners already in some cases, as indicated. We have a few on Long Island. Other hubs also have partners. In some cases, they're already integrated into networks in their own regions or in their own communities. And they're willing to share those partners and those networks with the P2P network, which would expand your network. That would be immensely helpful for all of us if people were actually all connected into the same network and had some way of connecting with each other more effectively. Third, we can, as we indicated, the RABAs are coming out. We're happy to share the information that's gained from the RABA, but we can also provide insights and information about resources and best practices from other parts of the state. So we have access to all of the RABAs from across the state. We can share those RABAs with you. We can also we will be, in our case, looking at the RABAs from across the state because we're interested in looking at what strengths exist in other regions that perhaps we haven't identified in our own, and therefore maybe we can start looking for those in our own region as well. So we have a strong interest ourselves in looking at those RABAs, and if we know that you're looking for a particular thing, if you have a challenge that you're trying to address, and somebody else is actually dealing with it effectively, we'd be happy to share that information with you. I'm sure nobody's interested in the fourth one, so I'll just move on to the fifth one. The funding opportunities. So the hubs do have resources that are available to set up pilot projects and community campaigns. And the pilot projects, essentially, as we indicated, are efforts where we're trying to more systematically address barriers that have been identified in our regions. So, and who best to actually identify both the barriers as well as possible solutions than people who've been working in this work all along. So if you're in a region, if you have an issue or a barrier that you've identified that's preventing constituents from accessing clean energy, the benefits of clean energy or taking clean energy steps, um, and you think you have a possible solution for that, the hubs can be a potential resource to help try that out. So if those things work, then we can obviously expand, we can amplify those, we can share those more broadly, both in the region as well as across the state. There's also funds for community campaigns. So these would be, think of Solarize or Heat Smart campaigns. But they can be for any number of different things. It's technology agnostic in the sense. If we're looking at somehow it has something to do with workforce development, but we have funds for campaigns to actually help reduce the overhead costs or reduce the soft costs or any other way that might be any other sort of effort that might be needed to make it to scale up clean energy steps in a particular region. And finally, as we've learned about successful efforts in other regions, we can share those with you as well. Any questions about any of that? And then I wanted to share a little bit about benefits that you can provide to your region's hub, in part because, if you want to go have a conversation with them, wouldn't it be great if you came in and said, look, we can help you do X and Y and Z. And so I've asked some of the directors, what could organizations do? They essentially, we can categorize it into sort of three areas right now. There are probably lots more, but let's start with those three. The first is to contribute to identifying and addressing barriers and strengths in your region. So as we indicated, you're working in this work. You almost certainly have identified things that are barriers to action. You've almost certainly identified resources and opportunities that you think would really be beneficial if they could be marshaled towards clean energy. And so, you can work to help us improve the RABAs. You can add to the resources that were identified in the RABAs. Problem solving. All the hub directors that I talked to mentioned problem solving. Would be great, they said, if we could basically work together with the organizations in our region and just like the common problems that we're having. Maybe just meet once in a while and just sit down and sort of say, how are you doing X, or how can we fix Y? And that would include, but it's not limited to, again, ideas for potential solutions to barriers. You can also provide people power and connections with community groups to test these different possible solutions. So if we've figured out that there's a barrier for people to show up for a training at a certain time because they don't have childcare or something like that, is there a solution to that? And if there is, maybe we can try it out, and maybe the whole design, maybe the whole implementation can be handled by you and your network, as opposed to actually having the hubs do that work. All the hubs need to do is work with you to provide you the resources and make sure that we understand what's working, whether it's working or not. And then again, you can disseminate results of successful pilot projects. So as you learn about them, both yours as well as others, share those results with your networks. The second, and this is that the sharing is a key part of this. Again, because of your networks, because of the connections to constituents, many of you are working directly in disadvantaged communities. The ability to actually amplify the outreach efforts and the customer recruitment that the hubs are supposed to do, you can play a tremendous role in that. There could be mutual events. We could piggyback on your events. You could piggyback on our events. The distribution of educational and marketing materials is another way. And simply directing interested households to the hub. We're working to try to make that process easier, more seamless on Long Island. Other hubs are also working on that as well. So wouldn't it be great if somebody's talking to you about something about clean energy, and you don't have to spend the time actually working with them to do that. You can just direct them to the hub, and the hub can hold their hand to help them come and figure out the solution, to help them actually implement the step that they wish to take. And then third, strengthen the network of clean energy entities throughout each region. Several of the hubs actually have designed into their hub plans The development of advisory groups. So the Long Island Hub has that, Southern Tier Hub has that, Finger Lakes Hub, I think, has that as well. And other ones do almost certainly. They have advisory committees as a part of what they're expecting to establish. And you could join those. Or better yet, if from their perspective, if you're already well networked in your region, maybe you could take that task on of actually managing an advisory group. So it becomes a sub network of your overall P2P network. So based in your region, maybe you're handling all of the network in a particular region. I suspect in our case, if somebody was going to manage that for us, we may have funds to actually pay for that, so that it's not us having to spend the time managing it. It's managed by somebody else locally who actually already is engaged in this kind of work. And you can also encourage other organizations to connect with the hubs. So other organizations, if you're benefiting from the hub and you have some other organization you're working closely with, perhaps they could benefit from the hub as well. So put them in touch with them, and so that we can lift each other's boats. So possible steps then. First of all, just get in touch with your hubs. And we can help there. We can introduce the P2P network at a hubs leadership monthly meeting. So the hubs leadership across the state meets once a month. We could incorporate a P2P, the description of the P2P and some of what you do in that monthly meeting. Another way is we can connect you directly to the hub leaders in your region. We're happy to do that. We can make introductions and warm handoffs if that's what you wish. We also, you'll have in this, in this slide deck, the hub leaders contact information. There's a link to that leader's contact information, and you can just reach out to them directly. I don't want to be a gatekeeper. Happy to help if you want me to, but you can just simply reach out to them yourselves as well if you wish. And then, as I said, you can identify what you can offer the hubs, so that when you walk into them, you're actually saying, here's what I can do for you, which will certainly break through the noise because most people don't typically do that. So if and this list that we shared earlier is a start towards that, but you probably have much better ideas than what I just offered. So you can offer to review the RABA draft, which again would be, I think many would be surprised and be very gratified. I would love it to have any organization on Long Island reaching out to us saying, hey, we heard that you had this RABA and we'd love to read it and we'd love to provide some input on it. And you can also offer